Now we're going to do abstract factory. If you have not watched the factory method, you should watch that first. This is just kind of, doesn't directly build on it, but it's very similar. And it actually uses that idea of the polymorphism, what I'm calling the polymorphism pattern, though it's not an official name. So we're going to make an interface for our animal factory. So we'll give it a name. We'll also, based on the factory method thing we'll do, we'll use the animal type as well. So the idea of a factory is to abstract away the new, so you don't have to say new everywhere. The factory method says I'm going to create this type always. If you give me a dog, I'm always going to create a dog. The animal factory gives you a bit more flexibility. The other thing is, as you saw with the factory method, quite often they'll be static, which means they don't allow you to deal with polymorphism, and you can't pass them around as classes without tying the classes together. Making it a polymorphism thing allows you to be much more flexible with that kind of stuff. So quite often you'll then have a default animal factory. You will generally, with this pattern, not have an intermediary abstract class. There's no point. And I'm just going to literally rip off the code we had from here. That's it. There's your factory. And then I'll just copy, actually I'll copy the polymorphism main. And I can get rid of everything else in there. Nope, shouldn't have gotten rid of speak. Get rid of everything else other than speak. So this is a simple one. It's not very complex ultimately either, but this is a simple idea. Oh, I have to make sure that I run the right one. Okay, so Terry says meow. So we made the factory, default animal factory. We told that factory to create an animal. That means we would go to the default animal factory. We passed in a cat. It's a cat named Terry. Cool. Same thing as before. We've just moved the code around to a different place. Where this becomes useful we'll make a verbose animal factory. This is a poor usage of this, but we'll go ahead. So we're going to, every time we create one now, we're going to print out that we created a cat named Terry or a dog named whatever, right? And in our main, we can now I switch those around just a little bit for consistency. So we're going to call make animal, passing in a cat called Terry with that factory. So here's my code that goes off and tells the factory to create the animal type. The reason why I made this whole extra method is now I can actually pass in different factories. So by default, I'm going to pass, or by this one, I'm going to pass in the default one. So we can run it, and we'll see that it does the same thing. Terry says meow. But if I change this to just be a verbose animal factory, we'll see that first off, I created a cat named Terry. Terry says meow. So what I normally use this for is to return different types. So my verbose one would actually return a completely different type of cat or dog or horse or whatever. But just to show that we're actually calling this method and just printing it out here. So we have information happening when the factory gets used. So this making this a class, making this a class or an interface, whatever, making this a thing that we can pass around means we're no longer tied like we were with the factory method to using a particular static method. So we have a lot more flexibility. You can and often will combine these two patterns. So we'll actually have factories assigned make animal factory true. So I'll use a factory method for this one. So if they pass in true, we'll make in the verbose one, otherwise we'll make in the default one. And we run this. And we should be told that we're making a cat named Terry. Once I fix my bugs. Making a cat named Terry. And if I just change this one thing here to false, we will now return instead the default one, and it will no longer announce that we're creating a cat named Terry. So quite often you'll find that you use a factory method to create an abstract to create a animal factory. So you use the factory method to create the abstract factory. And you want the abstract factory because we can't pass a static method around like we can pass around an object. That's actually now technically a lie. And we'll find that out later on in the course that there are some ways to pass methods around. But first off, this is this kind of factory thing is language agnostic. You can do it in Java, you can do it in a bunch of other languages. So it's better to not rely on language features for this. But if you're writing in a particular language, you can definitely take advantage of the language specific features. So if you can get a pointer to a function, a method reference, those kinds of things, depending on your language, you can use that, of course. But this is a nice standard way of doing it without that works in basically any object-oriented language. So those two patterns are designed, so abstract factory and factory method are designed to sort of work hand in hand. They accomplish a similar goal, which is to ultimately get rid of all the places where we say new and move them into one place. Or get rid of them entirely if you use the reflection idea. Putting in new all over your code is... I don't like to use the word bad, but we'll say bad because it forces you into using that particular thing that you said new on. If you want to change it later, you have to go back to your source code and edit it, potentially in lots and lots of places. Using the factories, you remove the where you say new to a different part of the program. Everything that says new now goes through that, and if you need to make a change to something, you can do that. It's all about providing flexibility. So when we look at main here, it's not hard to understand, right? We get a factory, it creates a cat. If we look at the main here, same thing. We're just making an animal, whatever the animal is, we don't know. And if we look at the first main, same thing, we're just creating an animal. But imagine we didn't have that create animal function, and we get rid of this, and we actually had this all over the place. So it's just argv length for simplicity. Right, so here, every time we wanted to call, do something with an animal, we have to create a brand new animal every single time. That can get quite messy. Imagine if we had 500 of them. You'd have to have 500 of these every time you went to create an animal. That would be horrible. Using a factory method, it becomes just a simple, I want to create that kind of thing. The problem again with a factory method is you're tied to that particular static method. So the next evolution is to make the factory. So now the factory can be passed around, right? And we can just say, I don't know what the factory is, but it's going to create an animal for me. And it does whatever it needs to do. But they're all designed to make it so that you don't have new littered throughout your program. There we go.